So this is new tonight. The January 6th committee still expects Rudy Giuliani will cooperate with its subpoena. That, as a source is telling CNN, that he may be willing to engage with the committee on certain topics. So joining me now, CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams. Elliot, good evening to you, sir. So a source is telling CNN that Giuliani may be willing to testify to the committee about claims of election fraud after the 2020 presidential election. Listen to what he was saying then, and then we'll talk.
Philadelphia is a professional place for voter fraud because you have a decrepit Democrat machine that you have had in power for 60 years, and it's the reason why you have voter fraud.
And there's no doubt about it. This was not an individual idea of 10 or 12 Democrat bosses. This is a plan. You would have to be a fool not to realize that. They do the same thing in exactly the same way in 10 big Democrat-controlled, in most cases, crooked city.
Aww. My question is, everyone's like, oh, Rudy's going to testify. Rudy Giuliani's going to testify. He said all of that. I mean, isn't he just going to say the same thing to the committee? What kind of nonsense do the committee expect to hear?
Yeah, Don, when people talk about testimony, they see it as this sort of all or nothing thing where either someone's going to come and testify from a big hearing or get hauled off in handcuffs. And, there's a world of ways that Rudy Giuliani can engage with the committee, from interviews in private or depositions, transcribed interviews, or so on. So there's a lot that they can get out of him, even if it's not specifically. I mean, now, look, they can press him on these statements made at the Four Seasons Hotel, I believe.
No, Four Seasons Landscaping.
Oh, pardon me.
Four Seasons Hotel is very nice in Philly. I live there.
Okay,
but the
excellent.
Four Seasons Landscaping, I'm not so sure. I don't know.
I stand corrected. So they can press him on that, but there's a world of other information they can get to him, namely about the president's whereabouts, conversations the president had, and so on. So, frankly, it is in his interest and the committee's interest to negotiate and work out some terms for his testimony.
So he does not intend, I understand, to waive executive or attorney-client privilege. What actual claims of privilege can Giuliani make based on his role as Trump's lawyer / voter fraud vigilante?
Yeah, now we got to be careful with how we talk about the privilege, because ultimately it rests either with the president or the holder of the privilege, which is, the client, right? It's not really up to the attorney to be the one who waives it. Now, he can speak about anything outside of the scope of his representation of the president as his attorney. Now, look, Rudy Giuliani gave any number of public statements, including the two that you put there, Don, where he can speak to those things. Anytime he gave media interviews, anytime he went down and spoke with Georgia election officials, all of that's fair game, because those were not conversations with the president. They were not legal advice or sort of executive advice he was giving to the president.
Okay, there's a separate Trump legal issue. The former president's longtime accounting firm, Mazars, informed the Trump organization last week that it should no longer rely on nearly 10 years' worth of financial statements and that they would no longer be their accountants. Okay, so it was only just last month that the New York Attorney General's office alleged that it has found significant evidence indicating that the Trump organization used fraudulent or misleading asset valuations. What do you think of this development?
Yeah, the interesting thing about those financial statements is that that information is at the heart of both civil and criminal investigations into the Trump organization in terms of how they were alleged to have elevated the values of properties for getting loans, but deflated the values of properties for paying taxes, right? And so it all speaks to the same allegations, which is that they were just not being candid about what the values of the property were. Now, the problem, Don, here is that at the end of the day, the valuations of properties are inherently subjective. Like, I might believe that my house is worth $10 million, and I can say that to my accountant, but at the end of the day, it's just an opinion, right? And it's hard to charge someone criminally sometimes on the basis of what they say in statements like this.
But even if you're trying to use it for leverage,
well, that's But that's, and that's at the heart of the investigation. Is it just puffery, and is it just beefing up the values of properties, or is it systematically and fraudulently trying to bilk banks and lenders out of their money? And that's just what the Attorney General is looking into. It's taken